I would love for you to do a deep dive into Would You Fall in Love with Me Again, how you arranged the music, writing the lyrics, etc. Let's do it! Something very important to me in capturing in the song was the tension of not knowing how Penelope will respond to Odysseus. I wanted to capture this feeling of uncertainty, and so the song begins with this single viola playing this straight note, and then you can actually hear Odysseus' breath, and then him singing the one thing you can always count on him to sing, Penelope. And then after he says Penelope, and right before he opens the door, there's this crescendo of all these strings, all these instruments. What's gonna happen? The first time in 20 years that Odysseus and Penelope finally get to see each other. Now, something that's really interesting to me is that in this moment that Penelope is asking if this is Odysseus who she is talking to, the nylon string guitar plays, because the nylon string guitar is that soft Odysseus, that gentle Odysseus that Penelope knows him by. So from an instrument standpoint, this is kind of like a calling out to, is this you? Is this the instrument you are? Now, when Odysseus starts singing his verses 1 and 2, we don't hear his nylon string guitar here. We hear the same soft electric guitar that is present throughout the song Monster. And so while Odysseus is singing that he is not the man that Penelope fell in love with, he's also using a different instrument in this moment. This is not the same nylon string guitar that she knows. This is his electric guitar. Even though it's his soft electric guitar, because he's not in the moment of like, I'm trying to trick you, Penelope. Now, if you know me, you might know that I like to write big songs, Warrior of the Mind, Ruthlessness, Thunderbringer. I like these really big songs. And so this song was very challenging for me because, first off, for the 95% of the song, there's no percussion, there's no beat, there's no groove, so that alone was a challenge for me. And also, I wanted the instruments to be very hyper-focused on Odysseus and Penelope's instruments, which is why for so much of this, you only hear the guitar and the strings. This entire first chorus is just that soft bonfire guitar and the string ensemble. Now, as we go into the second verse, we're able to bring in other instruments and we hear motifs from different songs because Odysseus is recounting the past events. So we have a motif from Ruthlessness here, we have a motif from Thunderbringer, we have a motif from Not Sorry for Loving You, and then in this second chorus, which I love so much, we wanted the strings to be spiraling upward. The anxiety, all this tension, this feeling is rising with Odysseus. So we have those strings that are going, and so with all of this rising tension, all of this music, we then go to Penelope's verse. And remember, Penelope's music, I always want it to be beautiful, gorgeous. So we have this soft piano, we have those strings coming in. Now here's a fun detail. If you recall, a lot of times whenever Odysseus is tricking someone or is doing his cunning stuff, you hear his guitar go, bum 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 bum. Now, in the moment that Penelope is telling Odysseus to move the wedding bed, you know what her viola is doing? Now, something I want you guys to remember is that Odysseus is the final boss of Epic. The suitors could not beat him, so it is up to Penelope! And so after she asks Odysseus to move the wedding bed, and he, gets into this more emotional state, you know what instrument comes back? In this moment where Odysseus is getting angry and he's recounting how he built the bed out of the olive tree, his nylon string guitar comes back. The instrument that is associated with the Odysseus that Penelope knew, who current Odysseus is saying isn't a thing anymore. That guy's dead. Now in this moment, angry Odysseus is back, but something really cool happens when Penelope fires back at him. We hear not just a viola, an electric viola! Because just like Odysseus and his love for Penelope, Penelope is ruthless in her love for Odysseus and is willing to make the argument that the Odysseus that she knows and loves is still alive, even if it pisses off Odysseus. Now, for a quick moment, I'd like to read to you guys some notes that I sent to Gigi when we were working on the animatic for this moment at the end of Would You Fall in Love with Me Again. To prove a point, Penelope then tells Odysseus to move their wedding bed out of the room, since he says he's not her husband. This turns into a momentary argument as Odysseus gets angry, yelling at Penelope, saying that that's impossible because he built their wedding bed into the olive tree where they first met. And so the bed cannot be moved because it is literally rooted in the ground. Penelope then yells back at him, saying that only her husband knew that information, therefore he must be her husband. There's a pause, a moment of tension here, as Odysseus was not expecting Penelope to fight back with the same amount of anger. He also realizes that, for once, Odysseus is the one who had been tricked. Similarly to how Odysseus responded to Poseidon's rhetorical question with a literal answer, "How will you sleep at night?" next to my wife, Penelope purposefully responded to Odysseus's rhetorical statement of, "I am not the man you fell in love with," by treating it as literal, proving the simple point that no matter what, he is still Odysseus and he is still her husband. Penelope is pushing through the pain she is carrying, the pain she has carried for 20 years, and she sees the pain Odysseus has carried for 20 years, and so she is fighting Odysseus to help end Odysseus's pain. While the suitors couldn't beat Odysseus' boss battle, Penelope does. She gets him angry and tricks him, all to prove that she will always love him, and she will always fall in love with him forever. So when she says, "Don't tell me you're not the same person," there are tears welling up in her eyes. How could he say this? After 20 years of her waiting, he comes back and says that he's not the man she fell in love with. No, he is, and she will not accept, nor will she allow him to accept, the metaphorical death of the man she loved unconditionally for 20 years, because Penelope has been fighting her own battles too, and for 20 years she has been waiting. Even when others died waiting, like Odysseus' mom, Penelope kept on waiting and pushing through pain and waiting for 20 years, all for Odysseus. Now, Penelope being ruthless in her love for Odysseus is illustrated musically because everything from this point on is in triplets. Even songs that were originally in 4/4, like Just a Man, the reprise of that, is also in triplets. So this moment here, not just in person. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, triplet. And now something that I really love is that Penelope's instruments are also acknowledging the pain that Odysseus' instruments are carrying. Because remember in Odysseus' second chorus, there's those strings that are going da 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 da. But now in this section from Penelope, there's those strings and her strings going downwards. They have both been carrying pain and they've both been spiraling, but they're spiraling into each other. Listen to this. They're both spiraling, but they fall into each other because she will always fall in love with him again because they are true love. Now, while the music in this last section is playing Just a Man, it's playing it differently in triplets, which throughout Epic has been synonymous with ruthlessness. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We hear the trumpet triplets. Where'd that trumpet come from? You guys know. And so the music playing Just a Man with the Ruthless triplets version is saying that this is a different man and that it's not the same man Penelope fell in love with. And yet Penelope is saying, screw all that, this is the same man I fell in love with. I'll let you guys decide who is correct.